Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt something you couldn't explain? A subtle chill, not caused by what they said, but by what wasn't there. Not evil in its obvious form, but something far more unsettling. A hollowness beneath perfection. A mask so smooth, it hides everything. Carl Jung once warned, the most dangerous people are not the ones who rage, but the ones who smile while denying their own darkness. These are the ones who project purity and bury their shadow. But the shadow does not disappear. It waits, it festers, and eventually it finds you. Carl Jung didn't find the devil in others, he found it within us. And he called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we disown. The anger we pretend we never feel, the envy we code in fake praise, the fear we drown in noise. We bury these parts in the unconscious, hoping that by ignoring them they'll disappear. But the unconscious is not a grave, it's a garden. And what we bury there grows roots, deep, twisted, and invisible. What we cannot face in ourselves, we begin to see in others. This is the heart of Jung's most chilling discovery, projection. You will meet people, at work, in love, and friendship, who seem to see something in you that isn't there. They'll accuse you of being manipulative, selfish, angry, arrogant, and you'll wonder where it's coming from. But it's not about you. You're not the person they're fighting. You're just standing where their shadow fell. They are not lying, not consciously. They really believe you're the problem, because their mind has rejected part of themselves, and now it must be found somewhere, anywhere, outside. That's why Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But that only happens if we're willing to look inward. Most people aren't. They'd rather live in a world where the enemy is always outside, where they are always the victim, the righteous one, the misunderstood hero of a story they wrote without knowing. The shadow projects itself with precision. It selects people, situations, and moments that resemble its own shape, and then it acts out its fear, its rage, its pain. And if you're not aware, you'll absorb it. You'll question yourself. You'll defend yourself. And still, it won't be enough. Because the war is not with you, it's with themselves, but you've been drafted. This is what makes projection so dangerous. It isn't just false, it's sincere. That sincerity convinces others. It creates false stories that feel real. It turns misunderstanding into mythology. And once a person lives inside their projection, they become immune to contradiction. Evidence doesn't matter. Dialogue doesn't matter. They are seeing through a lens and calling it truth. But Jung warned, what we deny about ourselves, we see in others. And what we fail to integrate, we eventually act out. The person who cannot see their own shadow will eventually become consumed by it. This is why he urged us to be vigilant, not only with others, but with ourselves. Because we all project, we all carry shadows. And the only difference between the dangerous and the awakening is whether we're willing to notice. So the next time someone misunderstands you with certainty, the next time an accusation feels like it belongs to someone else, step back. You might not be in a conversation. You might be inside someone's unconscious drama. And the only way to protect yourself is not to play the role they've written for you. Some people don't show their darkness at all. They smile. They say all the right things. They never raise their voice, never break the rules, never misstep. They are perfect. But something feels off. Too smooth, too polished, too symmetrical. You feel it before you understand it. A subtle tightness in the air, a lack of friction where humanity should live. And in that tension, Jung recognized a mask. He called it the persona, the social face we wear to survive the world. Not inherently bad, we all need masks, but the danger begins when someone forgets that it's a mask at all. When someone becomes so identified with their image that the real self underneath withers from neglect. You see, the persona is the version of you that fits in. The good child, the admired leader, the spiritual one, the funny one, the perfect partner. But perfection is a prison. And the more someone becomes that role, the more their soul begins to starve. What's terrifying is that the world rewards the mask. It applauds it, promotes it, follows it. But underneath that applause lies exhaustion, suppression, and a growing shadow that has no place to breathe. Jung said, the more one identifies with the persona, the more one's own life becomes lifeless. Because behind that perfect smile might be a person who no longer knows who they are. They've traded authenticity for admiration, truth for performance, and here's the cost. The more effort they put into looking flawless, the more energy their shadow gathers in silence, until one day it erupts. It's why the most controlled people sometimes explode, why the most spiritual collapse into scandal, why the most respected fall so far when they fall. They weren't bad people. They were just empty, trapped inside a mask they forgot to take off. There is a difference between being good and appearing good, and the persona is a master illusionist. You'll recognize it when everything seems right, yet nothing feels real. When someone mirrors you perfectly, but you can't feel them. Because they're not present, they're performing. Even to themselves. This is why Jung called it a betrayal of the self. Not because it's fake, but because it hides the living, messy, beautiful contradictions that make us human. True connection can only happen where there is truth, and truth is never perfect. The path back? It's not easy. It begins with courage. The courage to be seen. Not the version of you you want to be, but the one you are. The trembling voice, the doubt, the flaws, the quiet grief behind the smile. Jung's insight wasn't to destroy the persona. It was to remember, you are not your mask. And the moment you forget that, the mask begins to wear you. Some people don't wear a mask. They become the mask. And others go further still. They don't just pretend to be good. They believe they are good. Absolutely. Not just better than others, but closer to truth, closer to God, closer to the light. This is where it becomes dangerous. Carl Jung called it psychic inflation, a terrifying psychological state where the ego fuses with something archetypal, where a person no longer sees themselves as a fallible human, but as a vessel for something greater, the healer, the savior, the guru, the enlightened one, the voice of justice, the light in the darkness. It sounds noble. It even feels noble. But that's what makes it so deceptive. Because this isn't arrogance, it's conviction. Unshakable, unquestionable, untouchable. And when someone truly believes that they are a channel for the absolute, they lose the ability to reflect. They stop asking, could I be wrong? And now, they are no longer speaking opinions. They are delivering commandments. And if you disagree, you're not just mistaken, you're resisting truth. You're resisting them. Jung saw this again and again in spiritual leaders, political movements, even therapists. People so inflated by their own image of goodness, they became blind to the harm they caused. They didn't lie. They didn't manipulate. They simply believed. And others followed them, because the world is starving for certainty. In a chaotic life, conviction feels like clarity. Charisma masquerades as wisdom. Certainty feels safe. But psychic inflation is not stability. It's imbalance. It is a soul stretched beyond its limits, trying to carry the weight of the divine in a vessel made for humility. True spiritual teachers, the real ones, doubt themselves. They confess. They weep. They know the danger of mistaking the voice of the self for the voice of the sacred. Because the greater the light, the longer the shadow. Jung wrote, the inflation is always directed at others and never recognized in oneself. This is the terrifying part. The person doesn't see their inflation. They feel clarity, they feel purity, and they speak with a force that's almost hypnotic. You'll know you're in the presence of inflation when criticism feels like blasphemy to them. When you try to reflect something back and they respond as if you've questioned the order of the universe. Because you have. In their mind, they are the universe. And when that bubble bursts, and it always bursts, the fall is devastating. The psyche collapses under the pressure of pretending to be more than human, and the very shadow they denied for so long returns with a vengeance. Jung called this the return of the repressed. The crash after the inflation. The crash no one sees coming. Because the higher the illusion, the deeper the abyss beneath it. So what's the lesson here? Beware those who speak with divine certainty. Beware those who claim purity. Beware those who no longer question their own mind. And above all, beware of this in yourself. Because we all crave meaning. We all want to be the hero. But the moment we believe our story is more sacred than someone else's, we've stopped evolving. The ego wants to become God. The soul just wants to be whole. There is something even more unsettling than a person who believes they're good. It's the person who no longer knows they're a person at all. Carl Jung called it archetypal possession, a moment when someone's ego is overtaken by something vast, something not entirely personal. An ancient pattern, a collective force, a god masquerading as a personality. This isn't just about ideas, this is about presence. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt they weren't really there? The body was present, but something behind the eyes had changed, gone quiet, or too bright, or too fixed. What you were seeing was not a person, but an archetype looking through them. The warrior, the judge, the martyr, the savior, the prophet, the victim. These aren't roles, they're energies. Primordial transpersonal energy. And when the ego fuses with one, the individual vanishes into the myth. The result is terrifying. Everything becomes one-dimensional. Everything is interpreted through the lens of the archetype. Every conflict is a holy war. Every wound is divine suffering. Every opinion is a revelation. Every enemy is evil incarnate. You've seen this before, in cult leaders, in revolutionaries, in moral crusaders. Their certainty is magnetic. Their energy is overwhelming. People follow them not because they are kind or wise, but because they seem to embody something more. But that's the trap. Because archetypes don't care about you. They don't care about wholeness. They seek expression, and they'll use whatever vessel is available. Jung observed this in therapy, in politics, in religion. He saw how the possessed individual begins to speak with the voice of the archetype. They are no longer speaking for themselves. They are channeling something older, something bigger, something sacred and dangerous. What's frightening is that they don't feel lost. They feel chosen, enlightened, empowered. They speak with the force of scripture. They carry the weight of myth, and they lose the ability to doubt. Because doubt is human, and they are no longer human. This is what makes them so persuasive and so dangerous. Because behind the rhetoric of salvation, of purity, of revolution, there's often a hollow core, a self that no longer exists. Jung wrote, "To become possessed by an archetype is to be possessed by a god." But we are not built to carry gods. We are meant to relate to them, not become them. When possession occurs without conscious awareness, it becomes madness. Madness with a flag, madness with a halo, madness with a smile. The warning signs are clear. A fixed identity, a loss of playfulness, an inability to tolerate ambiguity, a glow that feels like fire, not light. When someone becomes only one thing, you are no longer speaking to a soul. You are speaking to a pattern, and that pattern doesn't care who it destroys. So what can we do? We recognize it, we name it, and we do what Jung said. We hold the archetype consciously, without becoming it. We let it pass through us, but we remain. Because the goal of life is not to become divine. The goal is to stay human. There is a kind of suffering that doesn't look like suffering at first. It looks like patterns, like strange coincidences, like life circling back again and again to the same pain. You change partners, but the heartbreak feels familiar. You switch careers, but the same emptiness returns. You move cities, but your demons arrive first. Carl Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, an invisible force within the psyche, a haunting, quiet pull toward familiar wounds. Not because we want to suffer, but because we haven't yet learned how not to. These aren't choices, they're instincts shaped by forgotten pain. Traumas we never understood, moments we never fully lived through. So now, we relive them. Not as memories, but as destiny. And we don't just repeat them, we recruit others to play their part. The betrayer, the abandoner, the one who silences, the one who saves, and then leaves. But it's not fate, It's the unconscious. And it's calling for your attention. Because what we don't transform, we transmit. What we don't integrate, we recreate. We project our oldest wounds onto the people closest to us, and then feel shocked when they behave in ways that echo our past. But it wasn't them, it was us, drawing them into the theater of our unresolved. Neuroscience now confirms what Jung intuited. Early emotional experiences form pathways in the brain. Default settings, emotional templates. They become the easiest roads for the mind to walk, even when those roads lead to pain. But the brain can change, the story can change, and healing begins when we stop confusing repetition with reality. You are not cursed, you are not broken. You are simply replaying what was never resolved, trying again and again to touch the original wound with new hands. But healing doesn't come from new hands. It comes from your own. From the moment you stop asking, why does this always happen to me? And start asking, what in me is asking for my attention? The spell begins to break. Because the tragedy isn't that we repeat. The tragedy is that we repeat without knowing why. And the moment you know, the pattern begins to loosen its grip, and destiny becomes choice. However, all the masks, after the projections, the collapses, the repetitions, there is only one path left: integration. Carl Jung said, "I would rather be whole than good." And in that one sentence, he shattered the illusion of perfection. Wholeness is not light without shadow. It is light that has walked through shadow and did not look away. Integration is the moment you stop denying what you are and begin embracing what you've always been afraid to see. It's not about becoming better. It's about becoming real. To integrate the shadow means to hold your rage without being ruled by it. To face your envy without collapsing into shame. To sit with your darkness not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Because the shadow is not evil. It is unexamined. It is exiled. It is the part of you that once served a purpose and then got locked away. Your manipulation was survival. Your arrogance was defense. Your silence was safety. Your judgment was grief wearing a mask. And once you see it, not justify it, but truly see it, it loses its power to control you. This is the paradox. The moment we stop pretending to be pure is the moment we become authentic. And authenticity changes everything. You no longer need others to be the villain. You no longer need yourself to be the hero. You can hold contradiction. You can carry paradox. You can be flawed and still worthy. This is shadow work, not the trending version, not the aesthetic, but the ancient, humbling, often brutal process of facing yourself. And it is liberation, because when the shadow is integrated, it becomes energy, creative force, compassion, clarity, power that no longer needs to disguise itself. Contemplative traditions knew this long before psychology gave it a name. Buddhists spoke of transforming poison into medicine. Alchemists called it turning lead into gold. Mystics called it union, not with the divine above, but with the divine within. And you'll know when you've begun, not because you feel superior, but because you feel quiet. There's less performance, less projection, less noise. You won't need to prove anything anymore. Because you'll know the parts you hid were never monsters. They were just misunderstood messengers, asking to be loved differently. So what is the sign of someone who's integrating their shadow? They can admit when they're wrong. They speak in shades of gray, not black and white. They listen. They ask. They pause. They are no longer trying to appear good. They are learning how to be whole. And in that wholeness, something rare happens. You stop demanding perfection from others. You stop making enemies out of projections. And you finally make peace with yourself. Not the self you post online, not the self others need you to be, but the self that has been waiting all along in the silence behind the mask, waiting to be seen, not improved, not polished, just welcomed. That's the path, not up, not down, but in. And if any of this stirred something in you, even a whisper, don't ignore it. The work begins not with answers, but with the willingness to ask deeper questions, not about the world, about you. Where do you wear a mask? What are you repeating? What have you cast into shadow? Leave your reflections in the comments, not to be seen, but to see yourself. And if someone came to mind while watching this, someone caught in persona, projection, or pain, share this with them, gently, quietly, as an offering. Subscribe if you're ready to walk this path, the one that goes inward where the deepest truths aren't taught, they're remembered. And until next time, keep your eyes open, not just to others, but to your own reflection in them.